The next thing we're going to discuss on this unit on soil organisms and organic matter are the forms of animal life which exist in the soil. Soil animals play an important role. Some would think as equally important to the plant life that exists in the soil. But I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of the bacteria and fungi in terms of plant life, in terms of their very important role in soil organic matter breakdown and cycling of nutrients. The animals that we're going to discuss, the first one, are the protozoa. Now the protozoa, also spelled on your course outline for this class, these are single-celled, very small forms of animal life which exists in the soil. They are so small that many of these would exist in the film of water that surrounds an individual soil particle. These protozoa are primarily predators, meaning that they're going to live on bacterial organisms, as an example. This is going to make them a part of this very complex yet comprehensive food chain which exists in the organic matter fraction of the soil. So as the protozoa live and exist, they're going to feed on bacterial organisms. They themselves are going to die and be broken down by bacterial organisms and others and release nutrients back into inorganic form or a form that's usable by higher forms of plant life which are growing in or on that soil. Another group of organisms, soil animals, are the worms. Now when we talk about worms, the first type that comes to our mind is going to be the earthworm. Now the earthworm is a very important organism which exists in the soil. It's important not because it really adds anything per se to the soil, but it's important for two reasons. Earthworms, when they're working and living and burrowing through the soil, create natural tunnels for movement of air in the soil and also for the movement of water in the soil. And both air movement and exchange of air with the soil, air above and the air in the soil is an important process. Soils which are well aerified typically are more productive soils. The other thing that these earthworms do, the reason they're burrowing through this soil is that they're ingesting soil, and as they ingest it, they're not really able to break down the mineral fraction, the soil particles themselves, but they are digesting the organic material which exists, some of it so finely divided that it exists really as a film, humus type of material around these soil particles. So earthworms burrowing in the soil are actually ingesting and or digesting the organic material that exists in that soil and are part of this decomposition process of soil organic matter. As they break it down, they utilize portions of those nutrients, and some of those nutrients are released in the excrement which they leave behind, which we often think of as being the casts in the areas where the earthworms are very active and burrowing. Now, we want a high level of earthworm activity in the soil for these reasons, but there are some situations where we don't want this activity to be high. And one that may be applied particularly to your field of study is if you're in the turf management area, we don't want a high level of earthworm activity because of the effect it has on the surface of the turf where these animals come up above, especially the night crawlers, come up above and reproduce or mate so they can complete their reproductive cycle at night. This has a tendency to cause these soils, in some cases, for the turf to be a little bit thin or barren patches. It also has a tendency to cause soils to be rough or uneven. And if we are in a situation where we want a very highly managed turf, this is a non-desirable effect. This unevenness, this roughness, this presence of casting materials on top of the soil where the earthworms have actually emerged above soil at night. So strictly from a biological standpoint, earthworm activity in the soil is very beneficial, but recognized from an aesthetic and use standpoint, it may not be desirable in certain types of turf situations. Another type of worm that exists in the soil, other than the earthworms and redworms, I'm kind of lumping several things together here, earthworms, redworms, etc. I'm thinking of very, very small forms of worm-like organisms now, which fit into a category which are called the nematodes. Now, these organisms are so specific that they're in their own phylum, the Nematophyta. And nematodes, we have some beneficial, but unfortunately we also have a large number of detrimental nematodes that exist in the soil.